In the summer of 1867, in a remote farming community outside Sedalia, Missouri, 8-year-old Timothy Caldwell became the subject of the most disturbing medical case study ever documented in the American Midwest. Dr. Samuel Harding, the region's only trained physician, filled 3 leather-bound journals with observations of a child whose behavior defied every principle of human nature known to 19th-century medicine. To casual observers, the boy appeared normal, even charming. Beneath his innocent exterior, however, lay something medical science of the era simply could not explain. For 6 months, 3 people died in accidents around Timothy Caldwell, along with dozens of farm animals found dead under mysterious circumstances. 11 people who had crossed paths with the child, all of them in some way, met misfortune. The official records were sealed by local authorities and hidden for over a century, but the truth about Timothy Caldwell reveals a darkness that still challenges everything we believe about the capacity for evil in childhood. The events that made Timothy infamous began not with violence, but with loss. Missouri in 1867 was still bleeding from the Civil War. Towns like Sedalia had sent their young men to die on distant battlefields, leaving widows, orphans, and communities struggling to rebuild. The Caldwell farm, nestled in a valley 15 miles south of town, had once been prosperous. James and Martha Caldwell had dreamed of raising cattle and corn, but James fell at Wilson's Creek in 1861, and Martha died of consumption in the winter of 1865. Their son, Thomas, barely 21, inherited land he could not work and debts he could not pay. When word came that his brother William had died at Andersonville Prison, leaving behind a widow and an 8-year-old son, Thomas saw both burden and opportunity. The boy, Timothy, would need a home, and Thomas needed help with the endless labor of farming. Thomas was a hard man, hardened further by war and grief. His wife Sarah had grown sharp-tongued and bitter during their childless years. Neither was suited to raising a child, especially one who arrived in the spring of 1866, carrying nothing but a small cloth bag and eyes that seemed far too old for his young face. Timothy was small for his age, with pale skin that burned easily in the Missouri sun, and blonde hair his Aunt Sarah kept cut short to keep lice away. He spoke little of his life before the farm, offering only fragments. His father had been a soldier. His mother had coughed blood. He had lived with neighbors after she died. What struck every adult was his politeness. He always said yes, sir, and yes, ma'am. He never complained about work or punishment. He seemed, in every way, the model of a well-behaved child. Dr. Samuel Harding first met Timothy in June 1866, when the boy accompanied his uncle to town for supplies. Harding, a graduate of the Missouri Medical College and one of the few formally trained physicians west of St. Louis, had learned to read people while treating both Union and Confederate wounded. Something about the Caldwell boy unsettled him, though he could not name it. The child was perfectly respectful, answered questions directly, maintained eye contact, and showed none of the usual shyness of rural children. Yet Harding later wrote in his journal, "I found myself deeply uncomfortable in his presence. His gaze held an intensity that suggested he was studying me with the same clinical interest I reserve for my patients." The farming community around Sedalia was small. Everyone knew everyone else's business. The Caldwell farm was isolated, but not invisible. Mrs. Eleanor Patterson, whose land bordered the Caldwells, often saw Timothy working the fields or tending livestock. She told her husband he worked with unnatural focus for a child, never tiring, never playing, never resting. She said, "It's like watching a little machine. Ain't natural for a boy to have no play in him at all." The Pattersons kept chickens. Eleanor noticed the birds grew agitated whenever Timothy approached the property line, clustering and squawking, refusing to go near the fence. Her husband dismissed it as coincidence, but Eleanor could not shake the feeling that the animals sensed something humans missed. The first death came on a sweltering August afternoon. 5-year-old Mary Fletcher, daughter of the town blacksmith, was playing near Willow Creek. Timothy found her body.
He walked into the Fletcher home at supper time, clothes damp, face pale with what looked like genuine distress. "Mrs. Fletcher," he said steadily, "I found Mary by the creek. She's not breathing." The search party found the little girl face down in water barely 18 inches deep. Dr. Harding ruled it a tragic but common drowning. What troubled him was Timothy's account. The boy gave an unusually precise description of the exact location, the position of the body, the condition of the clothing, even the color of water around her face. When asked how he happened to be there, Timothy said he had been searching for a lost calf. Thomas Caldwell confirmed the calf had gone missing that morning. It was found 2 days later, healthy and grazing a mile away. At the funeral, Timothy sat quietly, head bowed. When the family thanked him for his quick action, he replied with perfect solemnity, "I wish I could have found her sooner." But Eleanor Patterson, watching from across the church, noticed that when Mary's mother collapsed in grief, Timothy's pale blue eyes remained dry and watchful. 3 weeks later, old Henrik Larsson, a retired Norwegian logger, was found dead at the bottom of Devil's Bluff, neck broken from a 40-foot fall. Once again, Timothy discovered the body. He claimed he had seen the old man's hat caught on a thorn bush. Dead bees lay scattered around the corpse, far more than should have been present. The beehives at the top of the bluff showed no disturbance. Timothy suggested the bees had swarmed and caused the fall. Dr. Harding found the explanation plausible, but troubling. The bees were clustered only at the impact site. The third death shattered any notion of coincidence. In September, 6-year-old Jacob Mills vanished while playing in the woods. Timothy volunteered for the search party and, after 4 days, led rescuers to an abandoned well half a mile from where the boy was last seen. Jacob was alive, but barely. He died hours later from dehydration. Dr. Harding noted the well had been deliberately camouflaged with logs and brush, arranged with unnatural precision. Timothy had claimed to hear crying from that exact spot. That evening, Dr. Harding began keeping detailed notes on Timothy Caldwell. By November 1866, he had filled nearly 2 journals. The boy displayed an adult's understanding of violence and death, coupled with a complete absence of normal human empathy. Yet he remained the model child, polite, hard-working, church-going, always with a plausible explanation for his presence at each tragedy. The chance to gather real evidence came when Thomas Caldwell injured his back during the fall harvest. Daily medical visits gave Dr. Harding access to the household. Through careful conversation, he learned that Timothy had been conducting experiments on living creatures for months, perhaps years. The boy had mentioned a hidden cave where he went to be alone. When Harding investigated the site, he found a carefully organized collection of animal bones, crude surgical tools fashioned from farm implements, and a series of detailed drawings. The drawings, rendered with surprising artistic skill, showed rabbits, squirrels, birds, and larger animals in various stages of dissection and injury. Each was accompanied by notes in Timothy's neat handwriting. Subject remained conscious for approximately 10 minutes after removal of eyes. Vocalizations decreased gradually. Movement ceased after application of pressure to throat. But the most chilling pages were newer. They showed human figures. One sketch was unmistakably Mary Fletcher. Another depicted Henrik Larsson. A third showed Jacob Mills at the bottom of the well, annotated with observations on dehydration and exposure. Timothy Caldwell had not merely been present when these people died. He had planned their deaths, executed them with methodical precision, and documented the results for future study. Dr. Harding stood in the dim cave, lantern light flickering across the pages of Timothy's drawings. The sketches of Mary Fletcher, Henrik Larsson, and Jacob Mills were not the work of a grieving child. They were the meticulous records of a scientist conducting experiments on living subjects. Evidence obtained without a warrant, without consent, evidence no court in 1867 would accept from an 8-year-old. The medical world had no name for what Timothy was. Children were innocent by nature. Only bad influences or trauma could twist them. The idea of a child born without conscience was unthinkable. Harding knew that presenting the cave to authorities would brand him a madman damaged by too many war wounds. Timothy would be pitied as a traumatized orphan, released, and the killings would continue. So the doctor chose a different path. The next afternoon, while Thomas Caldwell rested with his injured back, Harding asked the boy to walk with him to the far pasture to check the livestock. Once they were alone among the dry corn stalks, Harding spoke plainly. "I found the cave." Timothy showed no surprise, no fear, no denial. He listened calmly, nodding now and then as the doctor described the drawings and notes. When Harding finished, the boy simply said, "You're not going to tell anyone." It was not a question, it was a statement delivered with absolute confidence. "Why wouldn't I?" Harding asked. Timothy